I didn't know it was possible to lose everything in a single night. My faith, my innocence, and even control over my own body. I've never liked telling this story, not because I'm ashamed, but because to this day, I can taste the metallic taste of fear whenever I remember that night. But maybe talking about it will help. Maybe I can understand how something so cruel led me to him, and why, even now, with everything I know, I still can't hate him. My name is Luna. I was 17 when it all happened. I lived with my mother in a small, stuffy apartment in the most forgotten part of town. She was a beautiful woman, but her bad choices destroyed her. She drank too much, slept too little, and owed money to dangerous people. The house was always dark, with leaks and strange noises that no one wanted to investigate. I grew up in that environment, surrounded by empty bottles and broken promises. But still, I believed in her. I thought that somehow she could change. Until that night. It was winter. The rain was falling lightly, and the television was on mute as usual. I was doing my homework at the kitchen table when someone knocked on the door. Loud, strong, impatient. My mother went to answer it. I listened to the muffled conversation on the other side until I heard a name that chilled me to the core. Dante. It was the kind of name that people only whispered. A feared man, known for not forgiving debts, for making enemies disappear, and for charging interest, even on unpayable debts. When he walked into the room, it was as if the world stopped breathing. Tall, dressed in black, with a gaze so dark that it seemed to devour everything around him. He was not obviously threatening. There was a calmness in his voice, as if he already knew that the outcome would be whatever he wanted. And perhaps that was the scariest part, the certainty. My mother was shaking. She offered him coffee, cigarettes, anything. He refused. She sat down, crossed her legs, and simply said, "You have until tomorrow." That was when she made the offer, out of nowhere, as if she were offering something worthless. "What if I give you my daughter?" Silence. My mind was in a state of disarray. I thought I had heard wrong, that it was a joke, that the alcohol was speaking for her, but it wasn't. "She's pure," she continued, as if it were just any offer. "Take her, and forget the rest." My stomach churned. I stood up from my chair, indignant. I screamed, told her she was crazy. But Dante just stared at me, a long, calculated look. "I want to see her up close." My mother pushed me toward him. I tried to resist. I ran toward the bedroom, but he was faster. He grabbed my wrist with a cold force. He said nothing. He just stared at me with a look that seemed to promise the end of everything I knew. "Deal," he said. And that's how it all happened. It wasn't a romantic moment. It wasn't with someone I had any feelings for. It was the payment of a dirty debt, made by someone who was broken inside. He took me that very night. And the strangest thing is, he didn't force me. He just waited, as if he knew I had nowhere to run. And in fact, I didn't. His house was huge, silent, full of shadows. Every step I took echoed as if I were being judged. And there he was, standing in the bedroom doorway, with that same serene and menacing expression. "I won't hurt you," he said, "unless you want me to." And there, in that bed that seemed too big for me, I lost something I never got back. But it wasn't like in the movies. It was slow, intense, painful, and in a strange and frightening way. Addictive. His touch burned. His words were like a spell. And when it was all over, I was no longer the same. What should have been a night of trauma became the beginning of something I can't even name. an obsession, a curse, or maybe a sick passion. All I know is that that morning, when he left me alone and said, "I'll come back to you," my body was shaking. But it wasn't just fear anymore. It was desire, and that scared me even more. When he said, "I'll come back to you," it didn't seem like a threat. It was a promise. And the worst part is that a part of me wanted him to come back. That morning, I lay down on his bed as if accepting a sentence. When I woke up, the room was empty. No Dante. Just the crumpled sheets, his smell still on the pillows, and an uncomfortable pain that reminded me of everything that had happened. I got up slowly, as if my body was in pieces. The silence of the house surrounded me. I opened the door carefully and walked down the long hallways, where the paintings seemed to follow me with their eyes. Every step said, "You don't belong here." And I knew it. In the living room, I found a note on the table. 3 words, written firmly, "Don't try to escape." And next to it, an envelope with money. Lots of money. My fingers trembled as I touched the bills. It was more than my mother owed, for sure. More than I was worth, probably. More than any virginity in the world could cost. And yet, he left me with that, as if to say, "You're not just a debt. You're an investment." I walked home alone, my body aching and my heart still trying to understand what had happened. My mother was waiting for me in the living room, with a cigarette between her fingers and the face of someone who had already had too much to drink. "He paid well," she said, without looking at me. "He saved our skin." I wanted to scream, to break everything, to tear that satisfied expression off her face. But all I could ask was, "Why?" She shrugged. "Because you're beautiful. Because he wanted it. Because it was either that or death." I never saw my mother the same way again. In the days that followed, I tried to pretend that it had been just a nightmare. I went back to school. I locked myself in my room. I avoided mirrors. My eyes were different. There was something dark in them, something that Dante had left. But the strangest thing was that I thought about him every night, every damn night. I imagined his touch, his warm breath on my neck, the way he looked at me as if I were his, and that made me tremble, with fear, with anger, and with a desire that I hated to admit, until he came back. He didn't call. He didn't send a message. He simply appeared at the school door, leaning against the black car, with his arms crossed and that dangerous look. My classmates whispered. Some girls stared at him, as if he were an actor in an R-rated movie, but only I knew who he really was. He nodded, a simple gesture, as if to say, "Time to come with me." And I went, without thinking, without reacting, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. In the car, he drove in silence. His big hand gripped the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the road. And there I was, trying to understand why my body was hot, why my skin missed his, why I hated and wanted that man at the same time. "Are you mad at me?" he asked suddenly. "No," I lied. He smiled without taking his eyes off the road. "You will be, when you understand what I really want." We arrived at a different house, further away, surrounded by high walls and cameras. Inside, everything was darker, colder, quieter. He took me to a room. It wasn't the same as before. This one seemed prepared. It had new clothes, perfumes, books, even a desk with notebooks. "You're going to live here now," he said, as if it were natural. "What?" Your mother agreed. It was part of the deal. You're mine now. This is kidnapping. Number this is protection. I spent days trying to resist. I slammed doors. I cried. I threw food away. And him? He didn't flinch. He watched me from afar. He touched my face gently when I screamed. He told me things like, "You're too precious for this filthy world." And little by little, my resistance began to break. Because he knew where to touch me, what to say, when to whisper, when to invade my thoughts. He never hurt me. He never forced me. He just made me want him. Even when I said no with my mouth, my body said yes with every shiver. And one night, after an argument, he cornered me against the bedroom wall, with his face so close that I could smell the wine he had drunk. "Do you hate me that much?" he asked, his voice low and hoarse. "Yes," I answered. "Then kiss me." I should have run away, pushed him away, spit in his face. But instead, I stretched up on my tiptoes and kissed him. The kiss was slow at first, then urgent, hot, wet, full of anger and hunger and desire. We clung to each other right there, like two addicts going down on each other. He picked me up, threw me on the bed, and took off my clothes like someone unwrapping a present they've been waiting for their whole life. That was the second time, but it felt like the first time, because for the first time, I wanted to. And that's when I realized I couldn't run away from him anymore. Not from him, not from myself. I was trapped by a bond that wasn't of blood, nor of debt. It was something much more dangerous. I thought I was starting to love him, until I realized that love doesn't bind. And what he felt for me was a cell disguised as protection. After that night, everything changed. Not just between us, inside me too. It was as if something had been lit, a flame that burned silently, intensely, and that left me breathless. Dante became everything. Every look, every touch, every command. He had this presence that dominated the space, taking away my free will without even having to raise his voice. And the worst part was that I liked it. I liked the way he looked at me after sex, as if I were his secret. I liked waking up with his scent on my pillow. I liked the way he said "mine" with such conviction that for a while, I believed it really was. He said the world was dirty, and that with me, he wanted to keep something pure. But how can there be purity in what started with a sale? The routine became a closed cycle. I woke up, ate, read the books he left in the room, waited. Sometimes he would only show up at night. Other times he would be gone for days. And during these absences, I felt a strange emptiness. It wasn't longing. It was withdrawal. He had become my addiction. At first, he was kind. He would come bearing expensive gifts, silk clothes, necklaces, perfumes, a little treat here, another there. After the kisses, after sex, he would hold me as if he was afraid I would disappear. "You are my light," he would whisper in my ear, "and I am the darkness that protects you." But no light survives imprisoned. Over time, the limits came, the rules. Don't use the phone. Don't leave the room without my permission. Don't talk to the staff. Don't ask where I'm going. And most importantly, never try to leave here. The room key? He took it. The windows, locked with darkened glass. My world was that golden, suffocating space. But every cell, no matter how beautiful it may seem, still has bars. And I started to feel it when I tried to ask about my mother. "She's fine," he answered coldly. "Don't talk about her. You said I would stay here for safety, but I'm a prisoner." He approached me slowly and held me by the chin. "Prisoners are not worshipped like you are. I give you everything: bed, food, pleasure, protection. Do you know what awaits you out there? Trash. Men who would use you and discard you. Not me. I want you whole. Then give me freedom. Freedom? He repeated with a short laugh. Freedom doesn't protect. Freedom kills. That's when I knew. He wasn't just a dangerous man. He was a broken man. Someone who confused care with control, love with possession. And I was drowning in this obsession. But my body still wanted him. And that killed me a little more each day. On the nights he touched me, I forgot everything. I forgot the pain, the fear, the past. I gave in. I screamed his name into the pillow while he took me as if he wanted to mark my soul. And in the next instant, I hated myself for it. I was in love, or I thought I was, because it was easier to believe that this was love than to face the truth. I was a hostage. On one of the strangest nights, he took me to the garden of the house. The first time I had left my room in weeks. The air was cool, the sky was clear, white flowers were growing near the high walls. This place belonged to my mother, he said, looking up at the sky. She died when I was 12. My father locked her in here. He said it was for her own good. I swore I would never do the same. I fell silent. But now I understand. The world out there is too cruel, and you are the only good thing I have found. I need to keep you safe, you know? This isn't safety, Dante, I said. This is a cage. He looked at me in a way I had never seen before, like something inside him was cracking. His hand came to my face, warm, trembling. You don't understand yet, but one day you will. One day you will be grateful. And in that moment, for the first time, I saw fear in him. Fear of losing me, fear of the world, fear of himself. And I realized that he was as much a prisoner as I was, trapped by his own madness, by the need for control, by the idea that love only exists if it is chained. That night, I slept next to him, but I couldn't close my eyes. His breathing was calm, his arm heavy around my waist. And there I was, awake, staring at the ceiling, asking myself, can I love someone who keeps me captive? Or am I just confusing addiction with love? I needed answers, but they would only come with time. And time, with Dante, was like everything else, dangerous, unstable, and addictive. It was when another pair of eyes saw me, for real, that I realized how invisible I was inside that prison disguised as love. The morning after our conversation in the garden, something was different. Dante left early. He didn't say where he was going. He just left the bedroom door unlocked, for the first time. It was strange, as if he were testing me, or giving me a false sense of choice. The hallway seemed longer than I remembered. Every step I took felt like a challenge. I walked up the stairs, ignored the security guard's stares, and made my way to the kitchen. Inside, a woman was silently washing dishes, and a young man, whom I had never seen before, was organizing boxes on the table. He looked at me, not like the others, not like a man looking at something he wants to consume. He looked at me as if he could see what was behind the makeup, the expensive clothes, the put-together appearance. He looked at me like someone who sees sadness even when she tries to smile. "Are you Luna?" he asked, his voice firm but gentle. I nodded. He held out his hand. Raphael. His palm was warm, his touch firm. My heart skipped a beat for a reason I still didn't understand. I went back to the room with an apple in my hand and a new name in my mind. Raphael. In the following days, I saw him often, in the garden, in the hallway, carrying boxes, fixing something on the balcony. He always greeted me with a calm, sincere look, as if he was waiting for the right moment to say more. And I started to wait too, waiting for him, for his words, for his silence that said more than 1,000 promises. In Dante's absence, Raphael became a constant presence, a reminder that the world still existed outside the arms of the man who called me mine, like someone who collects precious things. It was on a rainy afternoon that everything began to change. I was in the library, reading one of the books that Dante left for me. But my mind wandered. My eyes ran over the lines without focus, until I heard footsteps. When I looked up, Raphael was standing at the door, wet from the rain, his hair stuck to his forehead. "Can I come in?" I nodded, surprised. He approached slowly, his eyes scanning the shelves until they fixed on mine. "You always seem sad when you read. Maybe because I see myself in the characters trapped in stories they didn't choose to live." He smiled, a sad but genuine smile. "You know, sometimes living your own story is scary, but it's still better than living someone else's story." Those words were tattooed on my skin, and I knew, in that moment, that he knew, that he understood. "Why do you work for him?" I asked in a whisper. "Because I have to, but not by choice. No one works for Dante by choice." Silence. "And you?" he replied. "Are you here by choice?" I closed the book slowly. "Number. But I'm trying to find out if I can get out, or if I'm already part of this." Raphael came a little closer, his dark, intense eyes, as if searching for something that I didn't even know I had. "If you ever want to escape, tell me." My heart stopped for a second. "And would you help me?" "I would do anything to see you free." He left before I could answer. And that night, when Dante came back, hugged me from behind and whispered in my ear, "I missed you." I lied with my body and shivered, but not from longing. It was from guilt. In the following days, everything became more intense. Dante seemed more present, more affectionate, more attentive, but also more watchful, as if he knew something in me was changing, as if he could smell the doubt. And I hated myself for wanting another man, but I also hated myself for feeling so alive for the first time. One night, after a silent fight with Dante, where he noticed I was distant but didn't question it, I went out into the garden. The night air was heavy, humid. There, leaning against the largest tree in the yard, was Raphael. "You're different," he said, "because I'm confused." He took a step forward. "Confused or waking up?" I approached without thinking. His breath mingled with mine. "You remind me that I'm more than a luxury toy locked in a mansion." "You are." He touched my cheek. "You're more than all that, and you shouldn't be here." We were silent for a few seconds. The rain was beginning to fall lightly, and at that moment, my body did what my heart had already decided. I kissed Raphael. A light kiss at first, with a taste of guilt and liberation. Then firmer, hotter, full of everything I couldn't say out loud. When we separated, he was panting, and I was shaking. "This shouldn't have happened," I whispered. "But it happened," he replied, "and I don't regret it." We each went back to our own corner, but we weren't the same anymore. That night, Dante took me as if he could smell someone else on me. More urgent kisses, more intense, possessive, almost aggressive movements, and I let him. I closed my eyes and let him. But my mind wasn't there. I was with Raphael, with the idea of escape, with the cruel doubt. What if real love wasn't the one that said mine to me, but the one that asked me, "Are you okay?" From that moment on, nothing would be the same, because now I had a choice. And with choice came danger. The first time I felt real fear wasn't when he took me by force. It was when he smiled and said he knew. In the days that followed, everything seemed too calm, and that was what scared me. Dante went back to being the man he had been in the early days. Kind, affectionate, attentive. He took me to dinner in the main hall of the house, played music, made sweet promises with his eyes fixed on mine, as if I were his world. But I already knew. When he became too sweet, it was because something was wrong. And it was. With each controlled gesture, each kiss that lasted too long, each caress that seemed more like a rehearsal than real desire, something inside me screamed, "He knows." I didn't know how. I didn't know when, but the certainty grew like poison under my skin. And his gaze, that gaze of someone who observes more than he shows, now pierced me like a knife. On the third night of that suffocating calm, I woke up to a noise. It wasn't the usual sound of the house. It was something drier, more intense, a thud, then hurried footsteps. I got up slowly, tiptoeing, and opened the bedroom door just enough to see. 2 men were carrying something, or someone, and I saw for a second a piece of gray t-shirt being dragged down the hallway. The world stopped. That shirt was Raphael's. The panic was instantaneous, but I had to swallow it. I went back to my room, closed the door slowly, and leaned against it with my heart racing. I got dressed quickly, opened the drawer where I kept the few things that were truly mine, and hidden there, under an old book, was the note Raphael had given me a week ago. If anything happens, follow the north corridor. 3rd door, code 1947. There's an exit there. I held the paper tightly, but I didn't go. Not yet. I waited for dawn. When Dante entered the room, with the same serene smile as always, his brown eyes as clear as ice in the sun, I knew I had to pretend. "Did you sleep well, my girl?" he asked, coming closer with a kiss on my forehead. I swallowed hard and smiled. "Yes, I did. I'm glad. You seem calmer, I believe. Our last few days have helped with that." "They helped," I lied, looking at him as if I was still under the spell. "Great," because I was thinking, maybe it's time for you to let go of this idea of being free. Freedom doesn't protect you, Luna. I do. I know. He walked away, sat in the armchair next to the bed and crossed his legs. Raphael quit his job. He left last night, without warning. My blood ran cold. The hand holding the sheet trembled. "He did?" Dante looked at me, long, intense, silent. "He did. I thought you should know. You've been talking to him a lot lately." My throat went dry. "He was a good guy, that's all." His silence lasted a few seconds. Then he stood up and walked over to me. He stopped next to me and whispered, with his hand in my hair, "Never lie to me, Luna. I can forgive anything, except a lie." I smiled, but inside, I fell apart. That night, I didn't sleep. I waited. I listened to the silence of the house, and when I knew everyone was asleep, I got out of bed, dressed in dark clothes, tied my hair up, and went out. North hallway, 3rd door, code 1947. The lock clicked softly, and a passageway opened to reveal a narrow concrete staircase that descended into what appeared to be an old maintenance tunnel. Musty smell, cold air, darkness. I walked without thinking. Every step was a challenge to fear. Every sound was a threat. But the worst was yet to come. At the end of the tunnel, an iron door. I turned the handle hard, and there he was, Raphael, sitting on the floor, with his face bruised, his arms tied behind his back. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Luna, what are you doing here?" "I came to get you out of here," I replied. kneeling beside him, trying to loosen the knots. "No, no, it's a trap," he shouted, desperate. And that's when I heard it. The sound behind me. Heavy, slow, controlled. "I knew you would come." Dante's voice. I turned around and saw him there, standing at the entrance to the tunnel, his face emotionless, his hands in his pockets. "Did you really think he would escape? That you would escape? Did you arrest him?" I shouted. "Did you set all this up? I needed to know how far you would go, how far your addiction to freedom would take you. That's a disease, Dante." He took a step closer, then another. "Number this is love. You belong to me, Luna. Since that night, since the moment your mother offered you as payment, you were mine. Your body, your soul, your future. I am not your property, but you are." I pulled Raphael by the arms and managed to release him. He staggered to his feet, his face bleeding. "We are going to get out of here," I whispered to him. Dante gave a small smile. "Dangerous. Go, run away. I will let you. Today. Just to prove that you will come back. Because no one loves you like I do. And when you realize, you will beg to come back to me." He walked away, and there was no running, no screaming, just the sound of our footsteps fleeing while the man who claimed to love me left the door open. But the fear was still with me, because the kind of prison he created was not made only of walls. It was made of memories, of touches, of twisted promises, of a love so sick that, even far away, it still burned me inside. And now, free, I needed to find out if I could be whole without him, or if the mark he left on me would be eternal. I left his house with my body free, but it was only when I woke up crying in the middle of the night, longing for the arms of the man who destroyed my life, that I realized I was still a prisoner. It had been exactly 10 days since I ran away. 10 days trying to forget. 10 days trying to relearn how to breathe without the weight of his eyes watching me. Raphael took me to a faraway place, a small town, hidden in the countryside. He knew a couple who owed him an old favor, and that was how we got a tiny room in the back of a rundown boarding house. The walls were thin, the hot water was a miracle, and the bed made noise even if I took a deep breath. But for the first time in months, I could sleep without a lock on the door. And still, I didn't sleep. Dante was still with me, not physically, but in my dreams, in the smells I smelled on the street that made me turn around quickly, thinking he was close, in the faces of random men who, if they smiled a certain way, made my stomach sink. He was in my fears, in my desires, in my body. He touched you in a way that no one else will understand, Raphael told me one night, sitting on the floor next to me, after watching me cry for half an hour without being able to say a word. "I don't want to feel this anymore. He destroyed everything. But you loved him, Luna, even if you don't want to admit it. And that doesn't go away with running away. Love, that was the sickest part of the story. Because yes, I loved. Not from the beginning. Not that first night, when I was given away as a bargaining chip. Not in the first few weeks, when the hatred was so strong that I dreamed of ways to kill him. But over time, the poison turned into an addiction, and the addiction turned into heat. And when he lay down next to me, when he touched me with that mixture of tenderness and possession, when he said, "You're mine," there was something inside me that responded, "I really am." And that killed me. In the third week, I got a temporary job as a waitress in a simple coffee shop. It was small, quiet, but it distracted me. I smiled at strangers. I memorized orders. I pretended it was normal. But even with the apron tight around my body and my hair tied in a messy bun, the weight of the past still followed me. One day, while I was cleaning one of the tables, a customer left a folded note on the counter. I thought it was a tip, but when I opened it, there was only one sentence. "He knows where you are." My blood ran cold. I ran out of the diner, leaving everything behind. I went back to the guest house and locked the door, waiting for Raphael. When he arrived, he found me huddled in the corner of the room. He sent someone, Rafa. He knows. He didn't question me. He took the paper, read it, and simply said, "Then we need to go further. We can't run forever. He'll always find us. Then maybe we need to face him." "Face him?" She laughed bitterly. "You don't know Dante. He doesn't threaten. He destroys. And he waits as long as it takes to do it." Raphael looked at me with something that mixed pity and anger, and at that moment, I knew. I was going to lose him too. The next day, Raphael left early and didn't come back. I waited. I waited until dusk, until dawn. I tried to call. Nothing. I went to the local hospital, to the police station. Nothing. And when I got back to the room, there was another note under the door. "You should know that no one touches what's mine." My legs gave out. I cried so much that I didn't even realize when I fell asleep on the floor. And I dreamed. I dreamed of Dante hugging me from behind, his mouth pressed against the back of my neck, whispering in that low voice, "See? You can't run away. You're already mine. You always have been." When I woke up, there was dried blood on my shirt. It wasn't mine. The cell phone rang. "Private number," I answered, trembling. "Luna." Raphael's voice, hoarse, weak. "Raphael, where are you? What did he do to you?" He took me. He let me go, but he said that next time, he won't show mercy. He wants you back, Luna, and he'll do whatever it takes. Silence, panting on the other end of the line. "And you?" he asked, before hanging up. "What are you going to do?" I couldn't answer, because I didn't know. I wanted to run away, but I wanted him. I wanted to free myself, but I wanted his arms, and it was there, sitting on the floor of the room, alone, with the smell of blood and pain in the air, that I realized I didn't want to forget Dante. I wanted to understand why loving him destroyed me so much, and maybe I needed to go back to get that answer. It wasn't with handcuffs that he held me. It was with words, touches, cursed promises. And when I came back, it wasn't out of fear. It was because I needed to understand why hell with him still seemed more bearable than the world without him. It took me 4 days. 4 days to decide. 4 days trying to convince myself that what I felt wasn't love, wasn't desire, wasn't dependence. It was curiosity. It was unresolved anger. It was a closing of a cycle. Lies. All of them. I came back because I needed to feel again. I needed to see his face, hear his voice. I needed to know if he was still everything that had broken me, or if I was now strong enough not to let myself break again. I took the bus at 3 a.m, a long, silent trip. During the hours on the road, I relived everything. His first look, his smell, the way he knew exactly where to touch me, how to make my body bend for him even when I didn't want it to. And that moment when I realized it wasn't just my body he had dominated, it was my mind, my heart. I arrived in the city early in the afternoon. The warm breeze carried the smell of burnt asphalt and some hidden memory from another time. I took a taxi without saying where I was going. I just gave him his name. The driver didn't ask anything. He just drove, as if he knew. The gate to the mansion was open. I got out of the car before it even stopped completely. My hands were shaking. My stomach was churning. But my legs didn't hesitate. I walked to the door like someone walking to their own grave. And then he appeared. Dante, standing at the top of the stairs. Black shirt, open at the chest. Hair disheveled as if he hadn't slept in days. Hungry eyes. "You're back," he said, without surprise, without emotion, as if he already knew. "I came to understand what you did to me." Silence. And then he walked down the steps slowly, like a predator approaching its prey that throws itself back into the trap. "I did what I had to. I broke you to rebuild you. And you know that, Luna. That's why you're here. Number, I'm here to understand. If I'm still yours. You never stopped being." The answer came quickly, coldly, surely. He stopped in front of me, so close that I could feel the heat of his body invading mine. My hands clenched into fists. I wanted to hit him, scream, spit in his face. But what I did was lean my forehead against his chest, and I collapsed. "You destroyed everything." My voice was a wet whisper. I had nightmares. I lost friends. I don't know who I am anymore. He hugged me, tightly, as if he wanted to crush my pain inside him. "But you're here, and that's all that matters." In the following minutes, there was no conversation. There was touching, hunger, addiction. He dragged me upstairs, threw me on the bed as if he wanted to make up for lost time. He ripped my blouse, ripped off my pants. I couldn't resist, because part of me wanted this, and the other, I didn't know how to say no to him anymore. His body on mine, the weight, the heat, the hot mouth on my neck, the way he held my wrists, made me vulnerable and aroused at the same time. "Do you want to understand, Luna?" he murmured, his lips glued to my chin. "I'll show you. Everything. But it's going to hurt. It's going to burn. Because loving someone like me has a price." I was already crying, and even so I whispered, "Show me." The following hours were a mix of pleasure and punishment. He took me to the limit. So many times that I lost count. So many times I begged him. Not for him to stop, but to keep going. Because in the midst of the pain, there was an uncomfortable truth. I needed this. It was like peeling away the scabs, like seeing for the first time who I really was beneath all the dirt, the guilt, the anger. I was his, not because he forced me, but because in some sick, inexplicable way, my body, my soul, my will, everything screamed his name. Dante. Afterward, we were lying down, sweaty, silent. He ran his fingers down my back as if he were drawing invisible scars. "Why did you let me go?" "Because I knew you'd come back." What if I hadn't come back? I would come get you, even if I had to burn the world down. My heart sank. This was it. There was no happy ending. There was no escape. There was a broken man, and a woman even more broken, who felt whole only in his arms. I could fight, but maybe I had already chosen my hell, and he wore the perfume I couldn't forget. Some people die for freedom. Me? I died for love. A dirty, possessive, dangerous love. A love that, in the end, was the only one that made me feel truly alive. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. The sheets still smelled of him, of our sweat mixed together, of the dried blood on my thighs, of the madness we committed during the night. Dante was still asleep. A heavy arm around my waist, as if even unconscious he didn't want to let me escape. But I didn't want to run away anymore. I just needed to think. I got up slowly, I put on the first shirt of his I found thrown on the floor and went to the balcony. The city was still sleeping, but inside me, everything screamed, was this love? A place where you sink but don't want to leave. A poison that you know kills, but you keep taking it, drop by drop, on that balcony, with the cold air hitting my face, and my eyes burning from not crying so much. I realized it didn't matter what he had done to me. I would never be the same again, and maybe I didn't want to be, because before him, I was empty, living under the rubble of my mother's choices, of debts, of silences. I was just another girl without direction, and Dante destroyed me. But he also revealed me. He showed me that I still felt, still reacted, still bled. And that gave me something that no one had given me before, an identity. When I went back to the room, he was awake, sitting on the bed, propped up on his knees, with his eyes fixed on me. "Are you sorry?" he asked. "No," I answered honestly. "But I'm not at peace either." He nodded slowly. Peace was never something I could give you. Silence. I walked over to him, sat down next to him, looked into his eyes. "Why me?" "Because you were different. Because when your mother handed you over like a coin, I expected you to be just another one. Submissive, quiet, that you would accept. But you looked at me like you wanted to kill me, like you wanted to devour me. And I knew you were mine, but in the worst way possible. And why did you let me escape? Because sometimes we only understand what we have when we lose it." I rested my forehead against his. And what did you understand? That you are the only thing that makes sense in all this chaos. And that, if you want to go now, I will let you. For real. No threats. No games. But if you stay, I need you to stay by choice. Not out of fear. Not out of dependence. And if I say I'm still afraid, then stay anyway. Because I'm afraid too. Of you. Of me. Of what we are together. But I've never had anything so real before. My eyes filled. He touched my face, slowly, like someone touching an open wound. "Will you stay, Luna?" "I'll do better," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I'll start over with you." In the days that followed, Dante changed. Not in the magical way of fairy tales, but in the slow, suspicious, imperfect way. He stopped telling me my schedule. He stopped invading my space. He started asking questions. He started listening. He took me out to dinner. He bought me a book of poems. And one afternoon, he left a flower on my pillow with a note to remind you that not every beginning has to be violent. And that's when I understood. I would never have an ordinary love. I would never have routine, calm, stability. But I would have truth, with all the pain, with all the mistakes. I chose to love a man who hurt me, but who was also the first to see me beyond the pain. Years later, when I look back, I don't romanticize it. I know what happened. I know what he did to me, but I also know what I did to him. And in the end, no one came out unscathed, but also, no one came out empty. Today, I write this story not to justify, but to tell what many are afraid to admit. Sometimes, love is not what saves you. It's what destroys you first, and only then rebuilds you in the most sincere and most dangerous way possible. And that's what he did to me, and I chose to stay.